Oh yeah, fuck, it's horse beef here, man. What's going on? I wanted to talk today about the upcoming highly anticipated matchup that Poatan has been quote-unquote ducking for so long now. That's his fight with Magomed Ankalaev, because I think there is some overestimating going on as far as Ankalaev's grappling ability, and also underestimating as far as Poatan's ability to keep it on the feet, right? Because at the end of the day, right, I think everybody with a brain understands that if this fight remains on the feet, Ankalaev will probably get pieced up at some point. Even though he's no slouch on the feet, I think he might just be potentially the second or third best striker in the division right now. I do think so. He's actually quite good. He pieced up Rakic, although Rakic is quite complacent. I notice he doesn't really have a lot of killer instinct. And yeah, I don't know. Like, everyone at the top level seems to be able to beat Rakic. So I'm not too sure how much to take from that victory for Ankalaev. But he did very well in there. Pieced him up on the feet, has great kicks, has great hands as well, right? He might just have some of the fastest hands at 205 right now. So I actually think that most of the danger in this fight actually comes on the feet. On the ground, I'm not too sure I actually see what people are pointing to with Magomed. Like, at the same time, yes, he is a combat sambo world champion, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but I believe he is a combat sambo world champion, as all of these Dagestani fighters usually are, right? The ones that make it to the top level. So you can't really write off Ankalaev's grappling just because he doesn't have any submissions under his belt, right? Everyone always points to the submissions as submissions that what's happened in the past does not exactly mean that the same outcome will take place in this fight, right? Just because he hasn't submitted anybody before does not mean that he cannot submit Poatan, right? But he does have quite brutal ground and pound. He's actually quite a good ground and pound artist. But the biggest drawback for Magomed Ankalaev is a point that I'm sure everybody and their mama's been talking about when talking about this fight, right? It's the fact that Magomed Ankalaev's legs got completely chewed up and compromised by Jan Blachowicz, right? We're always going to point to that fight because of the fact that Alex Pereira is one of the best leg kickers in the game right now and of all time. And just like Magomed Ankalaev's legs are at a serious risk of being chewed up by Alex Pereira, your information is at serious risk every single day. Because did you know that anybody really could go to any data broker's website right now and purchase pretty much anybody's data for just a few bucks, and it's completely legal, not to mention the fact that big companies with poor security are being hacked on a daily basis, and your personal information is being sold to the highest bidder on the dark web so that spammers, scammers, and identity thieves can target you personally, and they face zero repercussions for it. And that's why I'm happy to announce that this video is sponsored by Aura. Aura will stay vigilant in monitoring the dark web and alerting you if any of your personal information is exposed, as well as swiftly alerting you if this information allows outside access to your credit and or bank accounts. Plus, to be sure that you know that Aura has your best interest in mind, they offer up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario become a reality for you. On top of this, Aura also identifies data brokers who are selling your personal information and submit requests to opt out on your behalf. In just a few weeks of using Aura, you'll be wondering what happened to all that spam you used to seeing. The Aura app also includes a VPN with over 100 virtual countries. Now ask yourself, does your current VPN provider offer all of this? Now if I've piqued your interest, you can go to my link, aura.com/horsebeefmma, and try all that Aura has to offer for 14 days for free. It's our own responsibility to protect our data, and Aura simply streamlines that process for us. Now back to business, baby. Like the way that he throws those calf kicks, no tell on them, no nothing. He just chops and he chops and he chops. And the damage accumulates so fast against all of his opponents that this spells some serious danger here for Ankalaev, because Ankalaev was not able to deal with the leg kicks of Jan Blachowicz, and I would say that Alex Pereira hides them to an even greater degree than Jan Blachowicz does. When it comes to Jan's leg kicks, he kind of just throws them. He doesn't really care where the shins land. He just has very dense legs, and what we saw from Magomed is that he doesn't exactly have the bone density to be able to eat those shin-to-shin connections, right? And it didn't really take too long before his legs were completely compromised and ended up laying and preying on top of Jan Blachowicz for the remainder of the fight. Yeah, he landed some good ground and pound here and there, but I would say that it's pretty impressive the fact that he was even able to secure takedowns after the legs were completely compromised. It was a bad look, dude. It was a real bad look. But you see the differences, right? The key to victory here for Ankalaev is to take it to the ground. The key for Pereira here is to keep it on the feet, chop down the legs, and break down Ankalaev, which is what I think will happen in this fight. I do think that we are in for that type of outcome. I do really think so. But Ankalaev, at his age especially, will not do anything to improve his ability to absorb leg kicks, because bone density is just what it is, right? You kind of have to build that at a young age. Ankalaev showed against Jan Blachowicz, he doesn't really have the bone density. He doesn't really have it, right? So I don't think that he will be able to absorb too many calf kicks from Poatan. But the difference is, right, because people will always point to the fact that Alex Pereira got taken down by Izzy, right, in his, fourth fight in the UFC. But you have to remember that the surprise factor plays a huge role in that too. I doubt that Alex was expecting to be taken down by Izzy, but also on the flip side, Izzy, who has had historically great takedown defense, was taken down by Poatan in this fight, right? With a beautifully executed single leg, turns the corner. Look how he finishes the takedown off. It was very well executed. So to assume that Alex Pereira since then hasn't improved upon his grappling, his defensive grappling especially, I'm sure that's a bulk of what he actually prepares for in camp for a lot of his opponents, especially leading up to his fight with Ankalaev. You would expect him to be very much prepared to have takedown shot on him, despite what Ankalaev has said, well, I'm just going to strike with him. We all know that's not going to be the case. As soon as Pereira starts getting ahead of steam, starts landing those leg kicks like he does, starts landing those jabs like he does, and starts putting damage on Ankalaev, we all know what's going to happen, and Alex Pereira is going to be prepared for that. But Alex has to be very careful about allowing Ankalaev to back him up against the cage, because that long guard, that mummy guard that Alex Pereira does employ will pose danger for Ankalaev when it comes to shooting in, because Alex Pereira is very good at managing distance with that long guard. It's going to be hard for Ankalaev, and he's going to be very wary because he knows the power that Pereira possesses, and I think that this will cause hesitancy. Once you cause hesitancy in your opponent, you can land so much easier, right? You can land so much easier and so much cleaner once you can make your opponent hesitate, and that's what Pereira is so good at. He's incredible at instilling that danger, at instilling that fear early on in the fights. And when I say early on in the fights, I mean like the first round, because it really only takes a round for Alex Pereira to actually break down his opponents, which is scary, right? Because some fighters, you see them, they take the longer approach, they play the long game in 5-round fights, go to the body here and there, try and sap your energy and then pour it on. But Alex Pereira just has to land a few calf kicks, and he already has you exactly where he wants you. And just based on historical information, the fact that Ankalaev has not dealt with leg kicks very well from prolific leg kickers like Jan Blachowicz, I see something very similar happening here. And like I was saying about the bone density, right? Alex Pereira is able, by getting in the gym and working, he's able to close that gap a little bit in the grappling. But Ankalaev can never close that gap when it comes to the leg kicks and the durability of the legs, the bone density of the legs. And you might be thinking, well, doesn't Alex Pereira throw calf kicks predominantly? He doesn't exactly try and go shin to shin, kind of like the way that Jan Blachowicz does, where he just throws them with reckless abandon. No, yes, that is true. Alex Pereira does throw calf kicks, but in order for Magomed to avoid said calf kicks, he will have to either get out of the way of them, which we haven't seen many fighters be able to do because there's no tell on them, like I said. But he will have to check them, right? And in order to check a kick, you need to sustain damage yourself, right? And if you don't have the same bone density as your opponent, I'm sorry, even if you check them, you're not defending them. You're still taking the brunt on the shin, while the guy with the more dense bones is taking less of it, right? There's this strange belief that I noticed going around the MMA community where there's this idea that checking a kick is somehow more advantageous for the one who checks the kick, but that's just really not the case at all, to be honest. And Alex just made out of some different shit. The man looks like he's made out of something harder than bone, and that's simply because the man was a glory champ. Look at guys like Alex Pereira, Rico Verhoeven. Getting kicked by these particular types of fighters is a completely different ballgame than getting kicked by anyone else, really. And it's because of the bone density. It's the way these guys train. It's the way they spar, man. They're built to destroy you, right? You don't want to absorb their shots bone to bone, right? Those kicks bone to you don't want that, because they will win that game every single time. They want you to attempt to check those kicks because you're just not used to it, right? You're uninitiated, as opposed to these dudes who have been getting punched, kicked, kicking, punching hard surfaces their entire life, hard sparring, right? Breaking down their bodies in order to build them back up. That's what these glory champions are all about. And Alex Pereira is no different. And Ankalaev, I don't think, is ready for it. And simply just based on the fact that he's Dagestani does not mean that he's some dominant grappler. He doesn't have the same type of top pressure that an Islam has or a Khabib had. He doesn't have that. He just doesn't have. He's not part of Abdulmanap's camp, right? That camp, that's not an Ankalaev. And for the most part, the fighters that we've seen really demonstrate extremely dominant grappling out of Dagestan have come from Abdulmanap's camp. The others have been skilled, of course, very good, right? Guys like Magomed Ankalaev, for example, Zabit, he was fantastic. But Ankalaev is not from that Abdulmanap camp. Not all Dagestanis are made equal just because they're from Dagestan and have the fucking same beard, right? They're not made equal. It's all about the preparation. It's all about the training. It's all about the camp. And clearly, Abdulmanap's camp, now Khabib's camp, I guess, is very elite, like producing some of the best, right? You look at Umar, Islam, Khabib. Those are like the three best Dagestanis, the most accomplished Dagestanis. Aside from Umar, of course, he hasn't exactly earned that fucking title yet. But you guys know what I mean? Like the best records altogether. Like these dudes out of Abdulmanap's camp are the best to come out of Dagestan that we've seen in MMA. 100%. Not all Dagestanis are equal, is all I'm trying to suggest here. Although I will say that one thing that does worry me a little bit with Alex Pereira is that just like a Dustin Poirier, man, Alex Pereira loves to jump gilly, right? He likes to attack the gilly, and I think that that'll be very foolish on his part. The guillotine, it's probably the most rudimentary submission that you can go for. It's the first one you learn how to lock, and it's the first one you learn how to defend. You know what I mean? So it would be foolish of him to try that against Ankalaev, because that'll very likely just end up giving Ankalaev free top control, and that's all he'll really accomplish with that. But just imagine the scenes if Alex Pereira is to finish Ankalaev via guillotine. That shit would be off the charts, bananas, off the walls, crazy shit. And let's take a look at the resumes as well, just to understand exactly what these two men have accomplished as opposed to one another, right? You have Magomed Ankalaev, a combat sambo master of sport, who failed the nerdy Brazilian jiu-jitsu test against Paul Craig. He was submitted against Paul Craig. It was his debut in the UFC, though, but still I have to poke fun. I know the Daggy fans will be crying, oh my god, you're such a hater, bro. Why are you such a hater? I'm just fucking around. But at the same time, he's one of few combat sambo masters of sport who is bested by jiu-jitsu. A one-dimensional fucking jiu-jitsu fighter like Paul Craig, who relies on Hail Mary triangle chokes to beat you. And he was bested by it, okay? Of course, I'm not going to talk about some of the other ones, like Martin Prachnio. Nice finish, of course, right? But Ian Cutelaba, the first one, early stoppage, but then he completely messed up Ian Cutelaba in the rematch. Nikita Krylov is a decent win. Ozdemir's a pretty good win. Thiago Santos is a pretty good win. And why is he fighting Anthony Smith? I don't even actually understand or remember why he fought Anthony Smith around that time, but finished him. Cool. Anthony Smith. The draw with Jan Blachowicz, where he got his legs chewed up, arguably could have gone either way maybe, but if you're giving Ankalaev the decision there, then you gave him the decision off of lay and pray. And then the no contest with Johnny Walker, and then knocks out Johnny Walker. Who doesn't knock out Johnny Walker? And who on that resume for Ankalaev, as far as the knockouts go, really impresses you that much? I mean, I guess Ian Cutelaba, it aged pretty well because Kutelaba's been doing pretty well, but he's been kind of a win one, lose one, win one, lose three type of fighter for so long now. Johnny Walker gets knocked out by everybody, he gets chinned by everybody. And Anthony Smith seems to get finished by everybody as well. So I'm not exactly impressed by the list of finishes that Ankalaev has put up. And then you compare it to what Alex Pereira has done in a short amount of time, right? KO's Michailidis, somehow goes to decision with Bruno Silva. Bruno Silva then went on to get dropped and finished by GM3, by the way, which just shows how crazy MMA can actually be. It can be so crazy at times. But then he goes on to finish Sean Strickland in the first round, finishes Adesanya, gets finished by Adesanya, beats Jan Blachowicz, split decision, controversial in my decision, or in my opinion, he deserved to win that. Finishes the unfinishable Yuri Prochazka, finishes Jamal Hill, finishes the unfinishable Yuri Prochazka once again, and then goes on to finish Khalil Roundtree in a back and forth war. Okay? I'm sorry, but what Alex Pereira has done, he solidified himself as one of the greats of the sport. Ankalaev has this perceived grappling advantage over Alex Pereira that really hasn't presented itself in Ankalaev's fights, right? It's just this perceived grappling advantage based on the fact that he's Dagestani. That is what I get from here. For anyone saying that Ankalaev is going to run through Alex Pereira, cool, but just understand that it's literally only based off the fact that he is a Dagestani fighter and you think that he has this massive advantage in the grappling department. You just think he does, but he hasn't really put that into practice is my main point here, and the reason why I think Alex Pereira will make this look relatively simple. I think it'll be relatively simple. I wouldn't be surprised if for the first couple of rounds it's back and forth. Maybe Ankalaev does get him down, but doesn't really do a whole lot with it. But for as long as this fight is on the feet, which I believe it will take place on the feet for a good majority of this fight. I do think so. I really do think so. because Magomed Ankalaev will have a hard time closing the distance in order to even get Pereira to the ground in the first place, because Pereira will establish the calf kicks early. He'll establish that jab early. He'll keep that long guard out there to keep Magomed Ankalaev at bay. And I think by the third round, he'll have Ankalaev broken down to the point where he'll finish him. I think he finishes Ankalaev here. But then again, man, I'm ready for Ankalaev to surprise me. I'm ready for him to employ this perceived elite grappling that he apparently has, but he hasn't shown yet, though. You know what I mean? And generally speaking, when you don't put that skill into practice, it can dwindle a little bit. It can dwindle a bit, especially when you don't put it into practice in competition, right? Because Ankalaev has been majorly a striker for the longest time now. And if he comes in here with those similar tendencies, man, I'm sorry. It's going to be a bad night for him and a bad night for the Daggy fans and a great night for me, because I will then make about 17 videos laughing at your misfortune, but not the misfortune of Ankalaev, because I respect him as a fighter. The issue, like I always say, is the fans. But that does conclude my thoughts on Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. I'm very much looking forward to that fight and the subsequent videos that I can make as a result. If Alex Pereira does go on and lose, man, I mean, of course, I will give all the respect in the world to Ankalaev, but I just cannot see it personally. But anyway, guys, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next one.